Well, good morning, Dam Fam. Today, recording day is Friday, July 17th, 2026. And on today's Daily Beaver Morning Show, we are going to take a look at the behaviors, the mood, the coverage from the Carney camps and the conservative camps. I just see that I've got my volume playing here in my ear. There we go. We'll take care of that. So we'll take a look at both camps. And of course, we need to talk about Smokegate. And I also have maybe a little bit of O'Leary Schadenfreude today. So grab your favorite bevy and put your paws up because it's Friday. Because here we go.
Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 6 and episode number 900. And gotta take a look here, 48, I believe it is. That did not work as I had hoped. Yes, of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada, always 100%. Right here, Canadian. Which hand am I using? This one? This one? No, the other one. Yes. Ah, cameras are weird. All right. Yeah, right there. Always 100% Canadian. And of course, as always, be verific. Today, recording day is Friday, July 17th, 2026. It is a gorgeous day here at the Beaver Lodge, at least sunshine wise. Beautiful blue sky, bright sky. Not sure what the temperature will be, but beautiful, bright blue sky. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him. Hey, Mr. Beaver A. And not with me, as usual, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast's founding sponsors. Almost tripped over my tongue there. The Pepper Master, the Misty Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. There you go. Wow. The Toronto Dan Douglas is the shirt queen. Let's go. I do kind of like my Canada. It's like, how many maple leafs can you spot on the screen at this time? I see at least 7. And then I guess more if I, count all everything that's in the controls. But at least on the screen showing for you, I think I see 7 at the moment. Um, yeah, thank you, thank you. Kids and Cubs, how's your mental health today? I am doing very well. A little tired because I was up later last night than usual, hence the late start. Today, doing a live coverage or a live watch party of what you know who, you know who. Um, uh, surprisingly, um, what about well, number one short. Thanks for that. But I guess, he was cutting into TV time and prime time, so, he wasn't gonna get an hour and a half. He had to get to the point. Uh, Stayed relatively on topic, despite, having an opening 5 minutes where it was sort of like, just a collection of all the grievances put and thrown into a blender and just blah, out, just to say, like, he hit all the notes, right? Um But yeah, so, surprisingly, bearable as an experience. Let's just put it that way. Even though it was still 100%, you know, well, not 100% bullshit, but uh, there was a lot of bullshit, and there's stuff in there that is, um, how would I put it? The big bombshell was that he was making an accusation that there is a definite proof of interference from China and probably people, particularly within the media, that were very eager and willing to help, and of course in other places too, right? And I really thought that it was going to be more. It still is laying the groundwork, right, to challenge the results of the midterms that he's pretty much feeling is not going to go his way before doing that, but it's not, um, not sure. It seemed that the original plan was to do like, putting ICE agents at polling stations, which he's not supposed to do because the federal government of the United States has no role to plan elections. Um, and it just sort of makes me wonder whether or not, he did the math and given how unpopular he is already, going that route uh, might not ultimately help him. If he needs to blame something, he might need to blame the big boogeyman outside, right? And this way, um, right, if he launches any investigations or legal stuff, um, since it's all national security, it gets kept on the inside. Oh, we found some really, really important evidence, some major, major evidence, but of course, it's state secret, so we can't share it, right? And then keep that tied up in courts and all that kind of stuff, and have other fundraising campaigns, and based on that, and maybe not go the intimidation of the American voter route. Maybe it opens the door for that to be a possibility. But I really thought that when he was going to talk about this type of thing and talk about the security of the elections, it was really going to be very anti Antifa, very anti left, very anti everything in the United States, Republicans in name only, right? All that kind of stuff that Trump doesn't like. Um, and he made it completely about something else, and he went a completely other route. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out for him, in my estimation, because in order to do this, he's making a very public accusation about China, much like we did about India. And well, we saw how India reacted when we made that claim, right? It's like Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had cocaine on his plane. Ah, right, and all the coverage that was like really, just like punching down every single instance. Um, uh, Except China is the one nation in the world that actually has leverage with the United States that could damage it if a battle was prolonged over quite a long time. we're the other nation that has some leverage that could hurt the United States, but um, given the different sizes, we could hurt them. We can make life inconvenient. Not sure if over the long haul, just with economic pressures, right, we could do them in. Maybe we can, right, because we do have some very strategic resources, but it's certainly not a theory I would like to test out. Whereas China just turns around and says, "Yeah, okay, you guys are getting no critical minerals or chips anymore. Good luck with your army." Uh, and that would make things very different. So the United States can push, but can't push as hard on China, and we've seen it a couple of times since he's become president again, where he's way more deferential with China particularly when he's in the room with China, than he is on TV. So him taking a swing like this, I have a feeling is not going to go over well in Beijing. Now, Beijing also has some limits as to what it could do because the United States is a pretty big trading partner as well. But you know, the people in Beijing and the type of government that they have there, they don't have to worry about being popular in 4 cycle terms or 4 year cycles. Just saying. So they have the liberty of certain other actions. Also, they're not a democracy. So they've given themselves the liberty of certain other actions as well. So, right, there's only so far you can go. So him taking that tack for me was a zig rather than a zag in what I was expecting, but the rest of it was all pretty much typical standard Trump, right? Um, we'll see what the fallout from that is. The other surprise is that there was no mention of Canada whatsoever. He didn't veer off topic, and in that sense, to take some gratuitous swipes. So, whew. The less he talks about us, the better. The less he thinks about us, the better too. I'm seeing all these panel things. As, well, what do we need to do to get the president's attention on this? Because the president's so distracted with everything that's going on in Iran and whatnot. And I was like, good, good, good. Let him be distracted. Yes, yes. I would quite find him. Let him be distracted until his term is over and he's gone. The less he thinks about us, the better. Don't ask him to give us. Don't ask him to give his attention to us. We, he says we don't have anything he needs. That's something he gives us that we certainly don't need. His attention. He can. Kid Elaine, the smoke has reached GC now, so Canada may be coming up. Yeah, indeed. So, up late last night, covering that. Great mood today. And like I said, wanted to zig and rather than zag because yes, there was the big announcement. The $2 billion announcement for defense and all that kind of stuff. And I will get to that. I will touch on that next week. There's also the AFN conference. Um, so there's lots of stuff, but it's Friday. And, I have a beautiful weekend planned. I'm going to go see my godparents. Perhaps, if I am lucky, have the opportunity to meet Kit Vim at the Montreal Street Food Fair at some point over the course of the weekend. And then we'll come back home on some point Monday. We probably will not have a show on Monday because we'll be in transit in from Montreal and probably not getting back until, I would assume, late afternoon, evening. So probably not a show on Monday. Just wanted to put that out there. Um, and I'm happy and I'm in a good mood and I'm going to do things where I'm going to be happy and in a good mood. So I figured I would um, do something that's a little less intense for me particularly, because when you're doing defense covering, there's lots of numbers and datas and particular details about what this is, and you got to get the name right and the name of the system right and all that kind of stuff. And I'm, and I want to do that justice. There's a couple of other defense announcements, and I want to package them together. Maybe see if I can get Kid Hugh, because he allegedly has a better camera now. So hopefully we can do that. Um, and talk about that defense stuff sort of like in one block. So, but it's happening and it's very, very important. It's a big deal. But um, there's a story happening uh, that's getting some coverage, as you know, a bit last week and maybe a bit this week earlier. There's been a certain number of stories involving Pierre Poilièvre and the Conservatives, because the thing I told you all would happen, particularly post election, particularly when he said he was not going to leave, right? He pulled a, and I'm telling you, I'm not going. You're the best and only job I've ever known. I wasn't feeling silly today. Yeah, when he didn't take the hint and didn't leave, and yes, there was still some hope because it was a minority government, I guess, statistically, and you could hope that the Mark Carney government uh, would run out of the starting blocks and trip on something and make a big rookie mistake, and you could pounce on that, and everybody goes, "Oh my God, did we pick the wrong guy?" And "Oh my God, Pierre, please save us, Pierre, please." And I guess there was a statistical possibility of that. I mean, it's not necessarily the case that a central banker is going to make a good politician, especially when the parry and thrust of the daily grind comes into play. But we are also talking about an incredibly intelligent and incredibly accomplished person who is not a stranger to public service. I mean, right? He was deputy minister within the public service. And I mean, the central banker is a public service position, even though the bank is at arm's length and an independent organization, right? Um, he may not have been a politician, but his entire career was pretty much, except for time at Brookfield and and even there's probably lots of government relations. A lot of his career was in politics, right? I mean, you pick up how the game is played when you spend that much time in it, right? Um, so we have at the moment two people, leader of the opposition, prime minister. The initial strategy was hoping he'd fail. Likelihood of that was very low given this particular person's experience and level of achievement. Didn't happen. Was expecting the prime minister to play games with the by-election. Didn't happen. There seems to be a pattern here of that whole concept again that Max Fawcett brought to light with Danielle Smith of the prime minister giving people everything they want, but nothing they ultimately need. Right? We see it with Danielle in the pipeline. Yeah, sure, no proponent, fine. Yeah, sure, reduce pathways, fine. Yeah, sure, fine. You're not screwing up my projects in north of BC, however, so we're going down south. All right, all right. Off you go with the next step. Good luck making that happen. And in October, of course, they're going to get the okay from the major projects office because it's just before the referendum, right? Uh, it's after that where the fun starts. Danielle Smith wants a decision in September 2027, right before the October 2027 election, because she wants to be able to run on, yeah, it's a go. We're going to have shovels in the ground, or we have shovels in the ground already. And I agree, Premier. That's what she desperately wants. That's what her goal is with this one. So she's going to push, and she's not going to meet any of the conditions whatsoever. And the prime minister is going to keep on giving her what she needs to ultimately get to the point where the company is going to make the final investment decision. And if she can't make the case, and if by the time that final investment decision, things on the geopolitical board have changed, that maybe there's not as much demand for our oil at that point, and looking forward as there is right now, because we're being told to act now because the moment is now, right? Um, but things can change. I- If it happens that there is just no business case for this, rather than the federal government telling Alberta and the Albertans, um, all of them, but particularly the ones that get mad when the federal government says no, or that's not possible, or that's not feasible, or whatever. Um, if that happens, right, it just turns their back. But if the federal government, as Pierre said, just gets out of the way, puts the ball in Danielle's court, and the business case is not there, and come final decision time, the company says, "No, sorry." What do you blame on the federal government at that point? They said yes to everything you wanted. They broke every one of their conditions. They bended and yielded on everything along the way. When they smiled while they were doing it. How do you blame the federal government then? No, I'm sure they'll try. But for the average person out there going, my God, the guy bent over backwards to make this happen. It still didn't happen. There's no business case. Let it go already. Right? That could be a logical conclusion to everything that's going on there on that front. But you have Carney, right? He's coming in, he's got his plan, he's working on it. He's working on the national unity options. He's going all out. He's having all these meetings. He has that speech at Davos that very much charms the entire world. He's leading a critical minerals alliance. He's leading a coalition of like-minded smaller nations. He's talking about asymmetrical geometry in politics. He is, handling Donald Trump as best as anybody can out there based on what we're seeing with relationships with global leaders all around. Um, Despite the fact that the United States keeps on trying to take a freaking crowbar to our kneecaps, we seem to be doing okay. Not as good as we would be doing if the United States wasn't doing all that kind of stuff. By the way, United States, if you, here, since we're talking about, I'm a little bit all over the place today, kids and ghosts. As you can see, my mind is just synapsing from spot to spot. But since we're talking about that, um, the United States on the smoke gate, right, is saying here, it's time for you guys to be responsible and take care of your stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, uh, United States, um, perhaps you would want to take a look at overall reality here at the moment. But here is, what's her name here? Chairwoman Lisa McLean. All right. And she had some thoughts.
Hello, Michigan. Another summer, more Canadian wildfires. One, make sure you check on your friends and your neighbors and you follow all the guidelines. It's serious out there. Second, I've been in touch with the White House. I've been in touch with Pete Hoekstra as well as Brooke Rollins. Last year when this happened, I don't know if you remember or not, but we actually sent some of our firefighters and foresters to Canada to try and mitigate the situation up there since they aren't really doing much. I will keep you posted on this, but in the meantime, follow the guidelines and check on your friends and neighbors. Hello, Michigan. Another summer, more Canadian wildfires. One.
Okay, so that was the message. That part is not so bad, but on the tweet, she writes, Canada needs to do more to stop this from becoming an annual crisis. Stay alert, take precautions, stay safe. Was like, if you would like us to do more to take precautions, assuming there was something that we can do. But let's humor you. If you would like us to do that, wouldn't that be more likely if the wackadoodle in chief in your own damn nation wasn't constantly trying to distract us by taking a crowbar to our kneecaps? Maybe we would have more time and resources to dedicate to being a good neighbor and better managing our forests. If you stop trying to frickin' hobble our economy and talk about having designs on annexing us. Maybe. I'm just spitballing. These people. These people. Tavi G, yes, and rest in peace to the Canadian pilot who recently lost his life fighting fire in Colorado. Yeah. I'm just, yeah. There's more to come on that stuff. So Carney is moving ahead with all of that, currently flooding the zone with so much policy that the Conservatives don't know what to do. He's actually using the Conservative tactic of flooding the zone against them, but he's actually flooding the zone with substance and stuff that is meaningful, and the Conservatives don't do substance and meaningful. This would be a golden opportunity for them to start licking their chops and actually showing what kind of policy that they can do by reacting like an reasonable opposition would be expected to act when faced with all this policy. But instead, we have Jamel Giovanni running to cameras, talking about liberal degeneracy because of obviously branding racism as liberal wasn't enough. And was really working for him, too. Right? Because when you enter the room with the volume up at 11, there's nothing like moving it up to 12 because that's more effective. Right? You got conservative backbiting and infighting. You got Pierre Poilièvre going to Stampede and taking a swipe at the team behind Christine Elliott and calling them liberals. You got people calling Doug Ford a liberal. Everybody that doesn't meet our purity test is now a liberal. So you got the liberals going, we don't think so, man. No, we don't want them either. Oh, man. They're airing out their dirty laundry in public. If you're watching the Twitter feeds of Nick Corvallis and Dimitri Soudas and all of those former operatives, is like they're just taking each other down. Corey Chenaik is on the hurly burly, just spitting truth and throwing bombs. But all of this is particularly unhelpful. Tim Horton. Tim Houston, not Tim Horton. Tim Houston's car gets swarmed. Yeah, probably have. There's no report of like an "Are you okay?" call. So sorry this happened. Maybe a statement that this type of behavior is unacceptable. Just saying. You know, it's a mess. It's a mess. And then the things that the whole conservative and influencer sphere losing their mind because Justin Trudeau appeared in a Katy Perry short or video or something for like a quarter of a second flashing by the screen, right? Lisa Raitt giving a comment when Justin Trudeau is seen at the World Cup. Said, can't wait for the breakup song. Because that just provokes warm and fuzzy feelings. Right when you're sitting there at home and you're watching that. Oh, I like her. Yeah, she's nice. Right? Um, and just the various attacks, right? The condo uh, conversion thing in BC, yes, the federal government set itself up for it by not having a proper communications plan for that and not having enough details decided at the time before they announced that. Just mention, oh yeah, we're thinking about this too, type of thing, which you should never do. That's okay in the boardroom when you're spitballing with each other, but it's not okay in front of a mic when you're already a politician and there are journalists there and there's an opposition ready to pounce. Yes, but taking it from that to, oh my God, there's an ethics thing here that's so bad. It's like, dude, the terms of the thing isn't even finalized yet. There's nothing that's happened yet that could be deemed unethical. And then sending it to one of the 5 committees where you have the majority, and then the chair of that committee, who's from your party, says that they are going to look at it. And then you go around and says, "Oh my God, there we go. We're going to look at it. The committee has decided." No, so your party decided to write the letter. Your party decided to bring it to the committee. Your committee chair decided it was going to go further. And then when it came time to vote, so you lost the vote, 5-4. The liberals on the committee voted it down. Yeah, okay, but the Liberals don't have the majority on the committee, so, and there are 11 members, so 2 people didn't vote. If all the Liberals voted for it, all 5 of them, that means the Bloc Québécois on the committee person, MP on the committee didn't vote or voted with you, and that means, 2 or 1 of your own members weren't there. I I'm not, I don't understand. If you wanted it to pass, why didn't you have the people there to vote to make it pass on a committee on which the government does not have the majority? And then the chair of the committee then turns around and goes, "Oh my God, the NDP liberals are going to spend $1.5 billion on this condo conversion." I was like, no, one, there's no NDP, liberal NDP. It's not the liberals in that. It's not Mark Carney and Abby Lewis. It's Mark Carney and David Eby. This is not liberal NDP like the coalition again. This is Fed Prov. The province had an idea, brought it to the federal government. The federal government said, hey, it's worth a shot. How can we help you with that? Which is how these things are supposed to go. And the federal government is putting up 10% of that. So it's really 150 million. The federal portion, the portion that concerns specifically the conservative guy. So yeah, I'm looking at the composition of the committee. There are 5 liberals on the committee. There are 4 conservatives, and there's 1 bloc. So that's a 10-person committee. The chair, conservative, usually only votes in the case of a tie. So there's 9 people, 5-4. Okay. So yes. Sorry, I take back my previous comment there because the chair doesn't vote and it isn't an 11-member committee, it's a 10-member committee. So yes, all 5 Liberals. Well, of course, they were going to do that. So I guess these committees are chaired by the opposition, but they don't have the majority, however. Okay, so that's how they do it. All right. So yeah, of course the Liberals blocked it. What are you going to investigate now? But like the motions that they present in Parliament, this whole push to get an investigation on this was designed for the sole purpose of everybody else on the committee turning around and saying, uh, well, for the Little Sound Committee, it's like, okay, fine. There's something, if you want to investigate this, fine. But it's premature to start an investigation now, given that there's actually nothing to investigate. Nothing's happened yet. So the people that are chairing this committee and running this committee are asking for investigations on things that have not happened yet, trying to represent federal provincial cooperation as being a coalition type thing in the federal government, and are trying to say that trying to make it look like the federal government is playing more than a 150 million role in a $1.45 billion project. All with just fun with words and juxtaposing things and being just slightly imprecise with words. But this is what they're reduced to at this moment. So you can understand that the coverage that these parties are getting is wildly different at the moment. Right? I say on the show often, if you want better coverage, be better people. Right? Oh, all the coverage about me is negative. Well, what are you putting out there to be covered? It could be that you're doing good things, and the people covering you are just saying, okay, now let's look at what they did and let's put the dark lenses on and find a way to twist that to make it sound evil, ominous, and bad. There are people who do that. There's an entire industry of people who do that. It's a real thing. But we get to the point that every coverage that doesn't give me a cookie is that kind of coverage. No. Right? Accountability is not persecution. You being asked an unpopular question despite being a popular person is not a personal attack. Right? Scrutiny is not a burden. Right? Scrutiny is not oppression. So expecting that the coverage is going to be entirely flattering all the time is unrealistic. Expecting that the coverage is always going to be about your policy and your ideas when you're out there acting the fool. Not particularly. Not particularly good either. So conservatives are not happy about the coverage that they're getting. Now, the coverage that the Carney camp is getting is not entirely positive either. Number one, with the press situation like we have it here. How could it possibly be that's the case with so much of our press being right wing and particularly owned by Americans? And yet, with all the press that is going against him, the prime minister is getting good enough press still that Canadians appear to still be appreciating him in public opinion polling. If we look at the latest data from 338 here, I am seeing that the spread between the Liberals and Conservatives has moved from 10 to 9 points. So from 45 to 35 to 44 to 35. But in the seat projection, the margin has widened a little bit from 208 to 101 to 208 to 99. The Conservatives are back down under 100 seats again if an election were to be held today, according to 338.com. And the Liberals are actually even showing a second seat in Saskatchewan, potentially in their camp. There you go. It's a toss-up, by just 1 point. I think it is someplace called Lewin in Saskatchewan, or Levin? Leuven, Lewvan. So somewhere in that area. That one is, it says that I think the Liberal, if the Liberals were running right now, if there was an election right now, they would get 43 and the Conservative would get 42 or something. So it's a close one, but right now it's showing 2, right? It's even showing 2 for the Greens as well. So there you go. So the polls are not particularly kind to Poilièvre, but that's been a thing for a while, particularly on the approval rating, right? Frequently way more than a 20-point gap. And then on the net, sometimes even more. There's even some talk now that fundraising might be an issue with the Conservatives. And as we mentioned on the show, with Pierre, that's about the only thing that's keeping him there at the moment, because the numbers sure aren't there for him. But if the money stops coming in, he's done like dinner in that party, because that party's all about the money. So, two completely different moods. And it's not like there isn't disagreement within the Liberal Party, right? Stephen Guilbeault left. There's an environmental caucus that's concerned, right? But they are handling their stuff internally. Stephen Guilbeault stepped away from cabinet and then stepped away from politics. But at no point in there, while being very honest and giving his take, did he attempt to burn the house down. Right? So this doesn't look like that this is the place for me anymore. I think I can be more effective elsewhere. This is not what I signed up for. I'm leaving. The Prime Minister still believes he can do it, but he believes he can do it that other way. I'm not convinced. I think I can be more effective outside this government rather than inside now. That's such a drama-free way to leave. And on the Conservative side, you got floor crossers. As passionate as Guilbeault is about the environment, I mean, he was willing to be arrested, right? The choice was not to burn the house down. It was respectful disagreement. There is some marked difference. You know, the Conservatives for a long time, especially early on, when they were losing people, says, well, Nate Erskine-Smith was talking about leaving, all that kind of stuff. Maybe you should cover the disruption in the Liberals. Yeah, we hear about stuff. The letter from the Environmental Caucus. They sent the letter, but they asked that their names not be released to the media. They didn't mind it being known by the public that they had sent a letter, or that a letter was sent and that this was brought to the Prime Minister's attention, but they didn't want their names to it because the objective is to try to get the attention of the Prime Minister and bring it to it, not to create a publicly humiliating situation for him, which would probably make him less inclined. Right? There's a difference in mood now, of course, with the Liberals. They were going to be going to political oblivion, allegedly, to a government, and then later on to a majority government. So, there's also a happier mood. And people who are happy and well fed are less inclined to fight. I'm just saying. But with the conservatives, it's not that they are not well fed, right? They've got money. They've got a lot of money. Not particularly good at managing it or spending it. There was data that came up showing how much each party was spending in the process of running their operations. This is money that we, the taxpayers, give them to run, the opposition office and the prime minister's office and all that kind of stuff, right? Um, and there's some travel and hospitality and that and all that kind of other stuff. And it would appear that the conservatives needed more than the liberals and the NDP combined in order to run their affairs. That's a ridiculous amount of money. So that happened. And then there was some coverage by the CBC, I believe it is, that brought to us that despite the fact that the conservatives raised a metric bleep ton of money, they ran a deficit as a party. The party of great management and economy, they ran a deficit. July 9th, Peter Zamanic. After taking in $84.6 million in revenue in 2025, the Conservative Party still finished the year with an annual deficit of more than $14 million, according to recently published financial audits. The audit filed with Elections Canada says the Conservatives' on-hand reserves helped clear some of that deficit, but its funds still ended 2025 with almost $5 million in net debt. In 2024, the fund had a surplus of $9.4 million. The Liberal Party meanwhile finished 2025 with an annual surplus of $3.6 million after bringing in $60.7 million in revenue. In 2024, the party ran an annual deficit of about $1.7 million. The audit says the party's fundraising arm ended the year with an improved financial position, showing a $7.85 million surplus on their balance sheet, up from $4.2 million in 2024. The NDP has yet to file its audited financial reports for 2025 with Elections Canada at the time of writing of the story. What is perhaps most remarkable about the financial statements for Canada's two biggest political parties is how much the Conservatives spent in 2025. Taken into consideration it was an election year when spending is always higher, the Conservatives spent $99 million in 2025, up from $50 million spent in 2024. All that extra money. And look where he ended up. Losing the election, losing a seat, requiring a costly by-election to get him back in the seat, not leaving Stornoway in the middle of that, as he should have, and then handing the Liberals a majority with the way that he comported himself in the House upon returning in September. They nearly spent double what they spent in 2024, and that's what they got for their money. Imagine if they had their hands on the national purse strings. And they ran a deficit. The party that became the government, the party that was the government and retained the government, needed less money to win the election and needs less money to run its daily affairs. The Conservative Party is not the party of fiscal responsibility. It's the party of grift. Let's keep that money coming in as fast as humanly possible, and then let's just live the high life and blow it. $99 million they spent, and look on the return on that investment. If you donated to the Conservative Party last year, look at what you got for your money. And look how much of it they spent. Look how much more of your money they needed than liberals needed. You are being taken to the cleaners. We're not hating. We're trying to warn you. You're having your pockets picked. You're being fleeced. So while the Conservatives spent 99 million rather than 50 million because it was an election year, the Conservatives spent 55 million, up from 18 million. So both of them spent much more. Much more. But the Liberals spent 37 million more in an election year than they spent in a previous year. The Conservatives spent 49 million more. And in the previous year, you want to know why Justin Trudeau was in the toilet polling wise? Because the Liberals spent $18 million in 2024 on this type of stuff. And the Conservatives spent 50, nearly 3 times as much. They blew all that money on trying to define Justin Trudeau as weak and ineffective and all the things that the Conservatives say about them. With that much money behind it, the message stuck. The bulk of the revenue each party brought in last year came in from the form of donations and election rebates. Candidates that secure at least 10% of the votes in their ridings are eligible for personal and election expense reimbursements. The program is designed to reduce barriers to running for office. The Liberals took in more than $29 million in donations and more than $31 million in elections rebates. The Conservatives brought in $48.3 million in donations. The independent audit of their expenses lists $32.7 million in government transfers, but does not provide a breakdown of that number. Now, here's another point, a data point that you want to look at. When I am looking at the donations, all right, Liberals took in $20 million in donations specifically for the election. The Conservatives brought in 48.3. The people who voted Conservative really wanted the Conservatives to win. 48.3 to 29. And what did they get for their money? Maybe that's why they're so mad. Look how much they donated. Being told, and this was while they were being told that the win was guaranteed. Right? While he had the 15, 14, 18, 19, 20, 21, 24, 26 point lead. The bigger the lead, the more they were donating. You would think the bigger the lead, the less that they would have to donate. But they were really enthusiastic and really mad, and they really wanted it. It still didn't happen. You want to understand the behavior online. Yeah, there's a lot of people that feel that they got ripped off, clearly. But they're mad at the wrong party. They're mad at the party that won, not at the party that had the bottom fall out from under it because of what it did to itself. Because in this movement, self-reflection responsibility and ownership are just not things. Sarah Fisher, the director of communications for the Conservative Party of Canada, told CBC News that of the more than $35 million the party spent during the writ period for the 2025 election, almost $25 million will be, quote, recovered through statutory rebates that are received following the election. The Liberals spent almost as much as the Conservatives during the last election, forking out $34.2 million because we have spending limits. So you can raise a lot of money beyond the limit, but you can't spend it, right? While the NDP's annual audited financial statements have yet to be filed, the party has filed its election expenses, which totaled almost $24 million. Fisher said that the Conservative Party had a $30 million credit facility for the election with a Canadian financial institution, and all of that money was used. The loan is repaid through rebates and fundraising, she said. That's why you keep on getting an email message or text message every single freaking damn day, if not several a day, Conservatives. Despite spending nearly $100 million last year, the Conservatives lost the election and leader Pierre Poilièvre lost his seat. Since then, the party has seen 4 of its members of parliament cross over to the Liberals and another appointed to the Senate, and then one that just up and left on her own. In all of 2025, the Liberals spent $21.6 million on advertising on radio, television, and other areas, with $21.3 million of that spent during the election period. The Conservatives spent $39.4 million on advertising over the course of the year, with $22.7 million spent during the last federal campaign, according to returns filed with Elections Canada. The audits also show how much each party spent last year on staff and salaries: $10.9 million for the Conservatives, $9 million for the Liberals. The Conservatives' largest expense category was transfers out, which stood at more than $17 million compared to the Liberals, who had transfers totaling $6.7 million. The audits do not provide details of where these transfers were sent, but according to Elections Canada, a party can transfer funds, property, or services to entities that have the same political affiliation, such as an electoral district association or candidate. So, Conservatives, not good with money in any way, shape, or form here. Talking about the Prime Minister, there are various articles out there that give you an idea, and they're not all flattering, right? It's not all, hey, Prime Minister, great job, yay, great stuff you did there. Let's have more of that. But with Pierre Poilièvre, clearly there's more coverage of the dirty laundry and the fact that, he's not delivering. He just simply is not delivering. And the thing with Pierre Poilièvre that's been infuriating a lot of people is that he has a 22-year track record of not delivering. You would think at one point that would factor into the coverage. But it doesn't necessarily. So here's like some ideas. For example, Bill Curry of the Globe and Mail: Carney's summer spending spree lacks detail and transparency, economists assert. Mark Carney's wave of summer spending Thursday included numerous billion-dollar references to new projects in British Columbia and Alberta, but economists are questioning the lack of detail as to where the money will come from. In his typical rhetorical style, the Prime Minister made several references to catalytic investments that will attract more than $200 billion in private capital. He made a number of federal funding announcements earlier in the day in Vancouver alongside British Columbia Premier David Eby, and then flew to Calgary, where he and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith announced plans for a proposed southern route for a new oil pipeline to the West Coast, led by the federally owned Trans Mountain Corporation. As is increasingly the case with major federal announcements, the background documents provided by officials lack important details. No information was released that explains how much Ottawa plans to spend each year on the various projects, nor how much would be direct spending versus loans. Nor was an update provided as to what the flurry of announcements would mean for the size of Ottawa's deficit and debt. Those details will presumably have to wait until the release of the government's fall budget. Quote, I've been involved with budgets in one way or another since 1977, and I've never seen such a lack of transparency, said Don Drummond, a professor of Queen's University's School of Political Studies. The former senior finance official is a co-author of the CD Howe Institute's annual shadow budget, where a team of economists attempt to estimate the size of the federal deficit before the budget is announced, based on spending announcements made throughout the year. Quote, we're trying to generate a status quo fiscal update, and we do not know what to do, he said. Are these loans? Are these loan guarantees? Are they actual capital purchases, which under accrual accounting we just record as amortization? The answer to all of this above is I don't know. Yeah, okay. I can understand that. I'm not sure if that means that there's a lack of transparency or we're just not there yet, right? We're doing a lot of things all at once, and sometimes we're announcing memorandums of understanding, partnerships, intent, and then that phase of the okay, well now we've agreed on all these high level stuff. Let's get down to the nitty gritty here and now nail down the final terms by which we agree to be bound, and that gets made public. So this does appear to be a government that talks more about the steps that it's making all throughout the process rather than doing what they did with C5, for example. It's just here's a bill. Now go out and pass it. Well, wait a minute. Whoa. There needs to be some consultations for a bill. You've got to work people up to get there. You've got to, build some public consciousness of what it is and what it is that you're trying to accomplish. You need to get some buy-in. There's a whole process that goes with that. You can't just write a whole bill, have it prepared, and just drop it on a table and say, here, pass this. Right? There's some work that needs to be done here. So yeah, I mean, I can see the situation where, if you're taking the economy in an entirely different direction, you're making a hard pivot like we're doing, that yes, at first, as you're announcing, okay, here's the direction we're going, here's what we're doing. Okay, here's who we're going to do it with. Here's the general areas that we're thinking about. Okay, here's some specific projects that we've come up with. All right, now we're going to negotiate the terms. You can see that progression, right? So, is it a desire for a lack of transparency, or is it we're just not there yet in the process? But we are informing you of what it is that we are doing and where we are going. But again, critique, because the things that are being mentioned, even though it may not be reasonable to expect them right now, given where we are in the process, they are things that are reasonable to expect. Right? So if this criticism is unfair in any way, it would be, well, yeah, but come on, you can't expect that would be available at this point. Like, come on, right? And if it can be, if it is reasonable that it should be expected at this point, then it is indeed fair criticism. Why the lack of transparency? But the elements of transparency that are being requested and talked about here are not unreasonable. Right? It's not like a conservative ask, like this. We're presenting a motion for you to, revoke all the laws that you passed over the last 7 years in your government. Like, yeah, sorry, we won't be doing that today. With respect to the package of announcements for BC, the Prime Minister's office did release some high-level figures. Mr. Eby said the announcements add up to about $20 billion in federal funding for his province, but didn't say over how many years. Mr. Carney said in his Vancouver news conference that Ottawa would support $10 billion in major infrastructure upgrades to expand capacity at the Roberts Bank Port Terminal. The Alberta submission says that is where oil from the new proposed pipeline would be loaded onto tankers for export to primarily Asian markets. Thursday's federal news release tied to the BC announcements pledged $3.9 billion through various tools towards a North Coast transmission line project. It also committed to supporting 1/3 of the capital costs up to a maximum of $3 billion towards the George Massey Tunnel replacement project under the Fraser River. Other pledges included $500 million to expand the Red Chris mine, which was one of the original major projects in the original 5 proposed, and $630 million for childcare in BC. Tyler Meredith, a former fiscal policy advisor to the Liberal government under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who has worked on budgets and Liberal platform documents, said it is too early for the government to release spending details related to the pipeline. See, There you go. He said the original TMX expansion turned out to be, quote, a very wise investment, even though it cost much more than originally expected. He pointed out in a statement that it is an asset on the government's books that is now generating dividends. He said it would be more appropriate for the government to wait until the project is approved before releasing detailed cost estimates. Jimmy Jean, chief economist with Desjardins Group, said he understands that some of the lack of detail around the pipeline is due to the fact that the financing structure is still being negotiated. See? As I mentioned, Mr. Jean said in an email that the government may be planning on drawing from existing funds like the Canada Infrastructure Bank or the Canada Strong Fund for some of these projects, but such information was not provided. Quote, it's very difficult to figure out what was pre-committed or not, he said. So, again, right? Talking about the projects, talking about the content, talking about some particular areas of critique or where we should be concerned, but also offering a counter view that it also might not be reasonable to expect this at this time. So fair, balanced, right? But certainly not elogious. And since it's leading right away with the concern, right, it's clearly not written to give the federal government the major props, right? But it accurately reflects what's going on. Um, and then you have, for example, Shannon Proudfoot, columnist that I very much respect for the Globe and Mail. And here's another take. And this is also about Carney and projects and plans and all that kind of stuff. One of the first choice of politics is when an elected official looks at you in the eye and tells you that the thing going on directly in front of your face is not happening. This happened twice during Mark Carney's Oprah giveaway day on Thursday. You get a port and you get a tunnel, and everybody gets a pipeline, whether or not that they wanted one. The first came at the tail end of the Prime Minister's press conference in Vancouver with BC Premier David Eby, in which they announced nearly $20 billion in federal commitments for the province's infrastructure priorities, along with a pledge to uphold the federal tanker ban off BC's north coast. That meant that Alberta Premier Danielle Smith would not get her preferred northern pipeline route, and also that one of Mr. Eby's deal breakers had been resolved. There you go. But after Mr. Eby and Mr. Carney spent 40 minutes extolling all these great things that they decided to build together simply because it was the right thing to do, a reporter asked the Prime Minister how he would respond to someone who said that the MOU is a quid pro quo for his pipeline announcement with Miss Smith later that day. Mr. Carney waved off the idea, saying, this is a representation of what we're all trying to accomplish to make Canada more independent, more resilient, more prosperous, more sustainable, more inclusive. Then it was Mr. Eby's turn to deny that Mr. Carney had come to town hauling a bag of treats. Quote, one of the realities of British Columbians is we build big things and we get big things done. And to be honest, we've been a bit quiet about it, the Premier said. Those days are over. To reduce this deal to being about Alberta is unfair, he said. It's a generational federal commitment that we have been asking for a long time. Of course, the Premier also said that the agreement ensures that British Columbians, quote, are fairly compensated for the environmental risks of a potential pipeline, and that he would not fight the project in court. So it would seem that the actual response to anyone inclined to call the BC agreement a quid pro quo is, you bet. And fair enough, really. Any province in the vicinity of Alberta right now must feel like it's pretty difficult to make itself heard, so Mr. Eby decided to seize his leverage and make some noise. The second instance of that absurd sleight of hand came several hours after the Vancouver announcement, when Mr. Carney was in Calgary with Miss Smith to unveil plans for a new pipeline to southern BC. It will be built by the federally owned Trans Mountain Corporation, with the private Pembina Pipeline Corporation contributing a small stake. And even that's doing a lot of work in that sentence, because they're not really contributing much, at least financially, until a financial investment decision time. That was a stark change from the original plan. The MOU that the federal government in Alberta signed with great fanfare in November explicitly called for a pipeline to be a private sector. Sorry. Let's try that again. That was a stark change from the original plan. The MOU that the federal government in Alberta signed with great fanfare in November explicitly called for a pipeline to be private sector constructed and financed. On Thursday, neither the Premier nor the Prime Minister could answer how much taxpayers could expect to pony up for the project. Well, I guess not. I mean, if they were hoping that it was going to be private sector proposed and financed, and now it's not. They might have to do that work now. Then, near the end of the press conference, a reporter asked the obvious: why does the private sector consider this pipeline so risky that it requires government support? Damn good question. Miss Smith ran through a roster of past projects: Keystone, Energy East, Northern Gateway canceled for one reason or another after fat investments had already been made. It takes some effort to help companies, quote, understand that this is a real process now, she said. Quote, maybe over time, as more and more certainty comes in, maybe we'll be talking with Scott about him wanting to take on a larger and larger share, Miss Smith said, grinning in the direction of Pembina CEO Scott Burrows. But we want to make sure that a company knows that we're walking this path with him so that we can get it to the end. Immediately after the announcement, Pembina issued a press release whose first sentence noted that the agreement was, quote, non-binding. It also said that the company's construction contribution was 10% with the option for another 10% once the hypothetical pipeline, quote, enters commercial operation. A few troubling questions stem from the lack of response of a private champion for this pipeline. One possibility is that this is strategic hesitation, like when a city needs a new stadium or arena. The longer investors waffle, like a cat on the doorstep deciding whether to go in or out, the more public money tends to get plunked down to sweeten the deal. The rushed timeline around this pipeline and the fact that it's an olive branch of national unity, not simply economic development, would only weaken the negotiating position of the public partners. Of course, taxpayers are ending up on the hook. And Miss Smith likes to talk about de-risking, but another word from that same idea, or one she would surely hate, is subsidizing. If the private sector hesitation is real, then something different seems awry. Let's see. Yes, if the private sector hesitation is real, then something different seems awry. The entire point of the federal government's Major Projects Office, its Building Canada Act, and indeed the whole thrust of Mr. Carney's economic policy is to build big things faster. He could hardly have greased the skids any more for this pipeline, at least within the universe of things he controls, oil supply and demand not being among them. But it appears that none of that has been enough to, say it with me, catalyze private investment yet. So are taxpayers going to own a money printing machine, as Miss Smith likes to portray it, or something much less certain? The delays, shifting government priorities, and unpredictable demand that may have scared private investors away from the pipeline still exists. It's just that now we'll all be covering them. It makes no sense that Mr. Eby tried to refute the idea that he landed a quid pro quo. He should be crowing that at least his province got a windfall out of this. So, again, fair comment. Not particularly flattering. But it's not, this is a terrible deal and it's all going to hell and there's nothing good about it, right? There are levels. So, here's another one expressing some doubt about Prime Minister Mark Carney. Whoops. Sorry here. I'm just going to make sure that I can see this one. This one might be behind firewall. I forgot to check it before I brought it up. No, I'm good here, I think. This is from Susan Riley. You might recognize her sometimes on CBC. I haven't seen her recently, but generally, I like her content. So don't always agree, of course, as always, but generally, I respect her work and the effort that she puts into it, and the clear lines of reasoning and logic here. But she asks a question: can we take Mark Carney at his word, or is he Prime Minister pants on fire? Interesting concept, right? Prime Minister Mark Carney's. Sorry, I need a little Beaver moistener. There we go. Prime Minister Mark Carney's charm, and that he has in abundance, may be wearing thin with some Canadians. His recent enthusiastic endorsement of another oil pipeline intended eventually to carry another 100 million barrels a day of Alberta oil to foreign buyers will surprise only those who have not been paying close attention. Carney has shredded most of Justin Trudeau's green policies, as we know, and warmly endorsed more oil and gas production. Despite the increased greenhouse gas emissions, this will inevitably unleash. But Carney's latest embrace of fossil fuels seems especially insane. Try that again. But Carney's latest embrace of fossil fuels seems especially insanely inappropriate at a time when climate change is driving a record hot summer in Europe. Earlier wildfires in Quebec and throughout northern Canada, flooding in southern Ontario, and elsewhere, even forcing the cancellation of Canada Day celebrations on Parliament Hill. Carney appears not to notice the inferno just down the road as he touts the incredible promise of oil. He clearly doesn't want to kill the energy superpower vibe. Disillusioning as this is for the core of voters still vitally concerned about climate, Carney's abandonment of an earlier promise made his usual emphatic no-nonsense style back in November was even more off-brand. He said at the time when he signed the famous MOU with Alberta Premier Daniel Smith that, quote, if there's not a private sector proponent, there won't be a pipeline. That promise was included in the MOU. All that changed on July 1 when he and a beaming Smith announced a proposed new pipeline that is to follow the existing TMX route from the oil sands to Roberts Bank south of Vancouver and to be 90% financed by the federal and Alberta governments. That could change by October when the Major Projects Office is expected to endorse the plan, but it seems unlikely. Carney's great appeal to many voters has been his disavowal of the usual distortions, accusations, exaggerations, and fatuous self-congratulations that characterizes political discourse. You might not like what he was saying, but you could take him at his word. He sounded so emphatic, so clear, for example, when he had laid out his conditions for any pipeline approval. Besides, his repeated reassurance and Smith's that taxpayers would not be left on the hook for this 35 billion to 44 billion piece of new infrastructure, Carney also said any pipeline deal was contingent upon major oil producers, formerly known as the Pathways Alliance, following through with a $16 billion carbon capture and storage facility to modestly offset new carbon emissions. In his words, no pathways, no pipeline. As of last week, however, it was looking increasingly like no federal money, no pathways. The industry, despite record breaking profits of recent years, has gone from lukewarm to cold about the prospect of paying for their expensive, long touted fig leaf and the ludicrous promise of decarbonized oil. They want Ottawa to cover it all. Will Carney increase already generous federal backstops for this dubious project with even more taxpayer dollars? It seems likely, although with new caveats perhaps that could, as we've seen, change on a dime. Yet Carney brushes aside his seemingly ironclad conditions with scarcely a blush and only unconvincing excuses. The government line now is that the world has changed so much since November that governments must step forward to assist the massively profitable but perpetually risk-adverse oil sector. But what exactly has changed? United States President Donald Trump is still being Trump, a menace to all human life forms. Yes, the Iran war has scrambled world oil markets, but some say made Canada's reliable supply and stable democracy more attractive than ever. If that's so, why are all the big oil sands players so reluctant to put their money on the table? Carney has that's a damn good question, actually. Carney has an answer for that too. Such massive investments must be de-risks for industry if they are to happen, with the risk transferred to us, the taxpayer. This is only reasonable, say industry proxies like Energy Minister Tim Hodgson and Smith, given how long it takes to build a pipeline, or a new oil sands plant for that matter, and how much it costs, not to mention past obstacles to pipeline development caused by pesky indigenous groups and irascible environmentalists who have made investors skittish. But those little problems have been largely taken care of. The proposed pipeline will follow an established southern route, thereby minimizing the prospect of protests. The oil tanker ban on the northern coast of British Columbia remains, and BC Premier David Eby has been mollified by massive federal funding for a variety of projects, including LNG expansions. This bolsters the argument from insightful energy watchers that the real explanation for the oil industry's reluctance to pay for ov- new pipelines or new oil sale. Blah. This bolsters the one more time. This bolsters the argument from insightful energy watchers that the real explanation for the oil industry's reluctance to pay for new pipelines or new oil sands plants is commercial. Unlike Smith, they simply don't believe there is a vast and expanding market for their product. Complaints about environmental regulations and Ottawa's alleged hostility to Alberta's main industry are secondary and simply habitual at this point. It's always been true that the future of market for oil in Asia and it's always been true that the future market for our oil in Asia and elsewhere is not infinite or even knowable given how quickly China is electrifying. And after the summer they are having, you can bet European countries will be transitioning off fossil fuels as quickly as they can under enormous public pressure. Some argue that a new pipeline isn't even necessary given flatlining demand and expected oil glut in the aftermath of the Iran US war, and OPEC adjacent countries increasing their output and flooding the market. As well, planned expansions of the TMS and Eggbridge main line will soon accommodate the extra 100 million barrels per day in exports intended for that brand new pipeline, say observers. They also say filling another new pipeline will require construction of new multi-billion-dollar greenfield projects, especially new mines. Also, Smith's fondest wish as she fantasizes about quadrupling oil sands production within 10 or more years. But there hasn't been a new oil plant built in several years because the price tag is too steep and the rewards too uncertain. National Observer columnist Max Fawcett, a perceptive and knowledgeable student of politics and finances of oil, believes that Carney has known all along this pipeline will never be built because the economics don't work. Fawcett suggests Carney has been playing Smith in a bid to dampen separatist fever and draw Alberta back into the national fold. He has been agreeing to most of her demands in the interests of national unity, knowing that by 2033-34, when construction is supposed to end, oil prices will be too low to make a new pipeline remotely profitable. That's one possibility, but there is another. That Carney, as son of Alberta and longtime corporate insider, wants to do everything he can to help the oil industry expand production and exports. He wants those revenues and those jobs and is willing to sacrifice climate measures to achieve that, as he openly admits. To appease his more progressive, climate conscious MPs and the Canadians they represent, he sprinkles money for electrification, EVs, and nature preservation into the mix. All worthy projects, but many of those federal contributions measure in the high millions of dollars as opposed to billions for oil and gas. They read as afterthoughts. In a revealing forward guidance video, one of the Prime Minister's regular meditations on the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. Carney said that as a boy in Edmonton, he watched the devastating impact of Pierre Elliott Trudeau's national energy policy on his neighbors. He thereby revived a cherished and only half-true myth about Alberta's repeated treatment. He thereby revived a cherished and only half-true myth about Alberta's repeated mistreatment at the hands of Eastern bastards. Unhelpful. Pipeline politics and economics are complicated. The oil industry spends lavishly to bamboozle the half-informed, which is most of us. But if anyone should be able to see through the false claims and phony threats, it would be a prime minister whose adult life has been spent in corporate corridors. Instead, we have a leader whose primary concern seems to be defending the oil industry rather than defending Canadians, those living in smaller northern communities, and increasingly southern cities too, whose lives, livelihoods, health, and habits are increasingly upended by climate change. How about de-risking them instead of throwing fuel on a fire that threatens us all? Again, uh, good points, well argued, not extreme. It's a reasonable take. That's the kind of coverage that we're getting for the Prime Minister. It's not elogious, it's not flattering, certainly not state TV, the way that the Conservatives talk about it. But now, let's take a little look at Pierre. We read you the one by Robin Urbach the other day, The Humiliation of Pierre Poilièvre, which was an ouch comment. We have, because Pierre Poilièvre decided to mention this at the Stampede, talking about the Liberal insiders who worked on the campaign of Caroline Elliott. She actually decided to put out a video herself and basically tell Pierre Poilièvre that it's time to unite and not divide. Caroline Elliott, pretty sure that her career in politics is far from over. It's not like she got demolished, right? It was, what was it, like 51-49 in the end? Not a big deal. But here, there's a little site about that on the national. So I'm going to bring that to you here. It will certainly include a little bit of the video. I was looking for the video itself of Caroline Elliott, uh, basically, saying it, and I couldn't find all of it, but there will be a segment of it in this news story here. And I apologize for exposing you to a little bit of PP talking, but it has to be done.
Thank you very much, Calgary. It's great to be home.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilièvre's Stampede speech started off with a routine shout out to special guests, including the new leader of the BC Conservatives.
The future Premier of British Columbia, Carolyn Finlay.
But then he seemed to take aim at her opponent.
Fresh off a big win against Liberal lobbyists from out east.
That suggestion sparked a backlash amongst some Conservatives online.
Hi, Pierre. Caroline Elliott here.
The runner-up in that BC race interpreted Poilièvre's comments as a swipe against her and hit back.
The race is over, and it's time to unite, not divide.
That call echoed by her campaign team, made up of big-name Conservative organizers, including some of Poilièvre's former staff, and others who worked with Ontario Progressive Conservative Premier Doug Ford, who've criticized Poilièvre in the past.
When Conservatives from a position of genuine care, consideration, and desire to see the party succeed express what could be perceived as critical opinions of the current direction that things have been going, that they shouldn't be treated like traitors.
The leader should be spending their time leading and building bridges.
The public infighting, a distraction, says this former Conservative political organizer.
I think it's unnecessary and unhelpful in terms of increasing the party's numbers in the polls, increasing support. It also takes him off of his own message on affordability, on crime.
CBC News asked Poilièvre for a response, but didn't hear back.
People are united behind the goal. They're united behind Pierre.
Some of his MPs, though, are coming to his defense.
I think he has a very strong standing in our party. But I think at the end of the day, what people are focused on are trying to get results out of the Liberals here federally.
Poilièvre passed a leadership review earlier this year handily. Conservative MPs reserve the right to trigger another one at any time. So far, there's no sign of that happening.
What are you hearing from inside the Conservative camp, Olivia?
Well, some Conservatives, even those critical of Poilièvre's remarks, say now is not the time for change at the top, but they say more discipline is needed within the party and unity so they can focus on winning. And while they regroup for the next federal election, they're also bracing for the Alberta fall referendum and preparing for several upcoming by-elections.
Thanks, Olivia. That's Olivia Stefanovic in Ottawa.
So, more discipline is needed. Somehow I have a feeling that we're not going to be getting that from Pierre. I was going to say, a little bit of breaking news here brought to us by Kit Uncover. Stan Cho has resigned from Premier Doug Ford's cabinet in the wake of the $1,600 hotel expense scandal first revealed by Global News. Yeah, that's another bit of news that we are hopefully going to be able to bring you more about over the next week. Just taking a look here because I appear to have gone fuzzy. Hopefully I can fix that up. There we go. That's a little better. There we go. That's better. There's a whole bunch of stuff about a whole expense scandal going on with the Doug Ford government. It just keeps on getting better for them too. The whole Conservative movement, I tell you, in Canada is having a not great moment right now. So we have that going on, right? We have Rachel Aiello from CP24 reporting on that. There we go. There is the video. There we go. And it's at Van Calderon. Okay. I had the wrong Twitter account for her, which would explain why I couldn't find the video. But now I have it. There we go. So here is the video specifically that she recorded. It's only a minute 25 because sometimes you don't need a lot of time to do these types of things. There we go. And it did not switch over, so let me do that one more time. There we go.
Hi, Pierre. Caroline Elliott here. I voted Conservative my entire life. I voted for you in your own CPC leadership race. My family and friends donate to you at my encouragement. I've attended events and knocked on doors for you, spoken up for you on social media and in my columns that you've actually posted to your own social media. I was the only candidate to publicly endorse you ahead of your leadership review vote earlier this year. So your MPs, and now you personally, celebrating my defeat in the BC Conservative leadership race is disappointing. The race is over, and it's time to unite, not divide. Because here's the thing. In that race, my team, made up of many of your own former staff, broke records not just in total dollars raised, but in the number of small donations from every corner of BC. We drove the issue set the entire time on things you're starting to notice, like property rights. We engaged thousands of people who'd never even considered voting Conservative before, who brought new levels of energy and excitement to the cause. And despite a very close loss in that race, I'm doing everything I can to continue to fight our disastrous NDP government here in BC, because I know that politics is about addition, not subtraction, putting the public interest ahead of personal disputes, welcoming people in, not shutting them out. I'll keep fighting every day to bring people together for the future of my province and our country. I just hope you decide to do that too.
Ooh, dang. Oh, wow. I just hope you decide to do that too. Jeez. Okay, clearly we're having a day that when we come back from a video, I go fuzzy. Hopefully we can fix that again. There we go. Technology, I tell you. So yeah, that was what was going on there with that part of it all. Let's keep going here. Rick Bell from the Calgary Herald, usually mouthpiece. So this one might be a little too enthusiastic here. But the title, Defiant Pierre Poilièvre fights back, vows to keep exposing Carney as a fake. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be working for you, but here we go. Quote, he's not giving up. He's not backing down. If he was a boxer, you'd need to knock him out. The man insists he is not throwing in the towel. He will continue to throw down the gauntlet. Wasn't so long ago Pierre Poilièvre had the momentum, drew the huge crowds at rallies across Canada, attracted the young and the working class, appeared to be on his way to the top. You know the rest of the story. Do tell it to us, sir, in your own words. Mark Carney is the Prime Minister of a Liberal majority government, and the Conservatives are in opposition, where Poilièvre leads the charge with no plans to put down his sword. Or with no plans. Just saying. Quote, listen, the people in whom I inspired hope have the exact same problems as they did, I regret, when I launched this adventure. They are still counting on me to be their fighter, and I'm still going to keep fighting for them. But how does Poilièvre break through the love-in with Carney, where the Prime Minister rides high in the polls, nothing bad seems to stick to him, and many Canadians, even some deluded Conservatives, cling to Carney like a security blanket, fawning over him and his supposed brilliance? Yes, deluded Conservatives. This is a warm and fuzzy column. Poilièvre says it's a good question. Quote, we have to hasten the collision of the reality with the illusion. Everything about Mark Carney is an illusion. Everything. The lady doth protest too much. There are conservatives, including in Calgary's white-collar world, who see Carney as a conservative. I think he looks temperamentally and visually like someone you might imagine would be a conservative, says Poilièvre. But then he goes through a list of Carney's spending and his taxing, his soft half measures against criminals, his woke policies on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then we go through Pierre's ability to manage a budget, either his office's one or the one of his party. Just saying. Poilièvre says former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was style over substance. Carney is the style of substance. The very sophisticated looking hand gestures, the corporate buzzwords, how Carney speaks more calmly. It's a shtick. I think we're going to have to ask people, what is life for you, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, says Mr. Poilièvre. What is happening in your life that's actually better today than it was a year ago? So what I have to do is connect people's personal realities with the liberal media's false illusions of Carney. Get rid of all the illusions and focus on the substance and the reality people will experience. Oh my God. I tell you, if Cyclospora had a voice, it would be Pierre Poilièvre's. The amount of verbal diarrhea we get from that man, oh my God. Poilièvre asks how you can believe Carney's intentions on energy. Poilièvre asks how you can... Sorry, let's try that one more time. Poilièvre asks how you can believe Carney's intentions on energy when the man was, quote, the intellectual godfather of the phase-out of oil and gas, and 4 years later we're expected to swallow the idea he now believes carbon is no longer going to end the world. How can you believe anything he says when he carries out that kind of reversal in such a short time? As for pipelines, the conservative leader says Albertans do not have to be grateful when the Liberals agreed to do a little bit less damage to the major industry of the province. It's sad we're in a place right now where federal Liberal regulations and taxes make it impossible for the private sector to build projects that are wildly profitable much quicker and involve no tax dollars in other jurisdictions. A populist message is still never far from Poilièvre. To a conservative gathering at the Stampede, Poilièvre speaks of people doing the backbreaking work, but when the harvest comes in, a group of aristocrats comes along and scoops up the harvest. Who are the aristocrats? They are the power brokers, the lobbyists, the corporate insiders who have control of the government and form the political establishment of the country right now, because after 22 years in politics, Pierre Poilièvre isn't the ultimate conservative insider. The conservative leader points to the Liberal plan to buy unsold condos in BC and turn them into affordable housing. The Carney Liberals shut down the debate on the scheme. Poilièvre is on fire, scorching Carney for this stunt. He speaks of it as economic injustice in an unjust economy. Poilièvre says working class people and young people are shut out of housing because of the steep rise in home prices to the profit of bankers and some developers. Now, when the bubble bursts in Vancouver, God forbid the billionaire developer takes his medicine. Falling prices are the one relief for the young home buyer. Mark Carney says, no, we can't allow that. The aristocrats deserve to have their cake and eat it too. They get all the upside, but none of the downside, all the profit, but none of the loss, all of the gain and none of the risk. He wants to swoop in and use your tax dollars to bid against you for the condo you might like to buy. Classic Poilièvre. Of course, there are other voices. Classic Poilièvre isn't a compliment there, by the way. I mean, Rick Bell is intending it as a compliment, but it doesn't land as a compliment here. Of course, there are other voices. A Toronto writer this week says Poilièvre is holding on for dear life. Poilièvre shows me a video where he took to the stage of Cowboy Stampede tent for a few days back. All you could hear were cheers and whistles and screams. And that's one thing conservatives like to do, and I might have an example of it for you later. It's like, everybody says that Poilièvre is unpopular. Well, Carney's unpopular too. Take a look at this. And then they take a picture and they show some video of Carney at Stampede and he's announced and there's some people booing. Well, of course, the Liberal Prime Minister is going to get booed in Alberta at some point. That doesn't prove a damn thing. Poilièvre got cheers, nothing but cheers, yeah, in Alberta. That don't prove a damn thing. That's right up there with Poilièvre got 87% of the vote, yeah, of delegates that were pretty much handpicked and were asked somewhere in the process, allegedly, if they would be inclined to support Poilièvre if they were chosen as a delegate at a conference that was held in Calgary in January. Well, there was a similar conference going on in Ontario for Ontario Conservatives. And the voting had to be in person. You couldn't vote remotely. That was not 87% support. Then there's Anthony Kosh, who I believe was a volunteer on Pierre's campaign. One of the people that Pierre referred to as an Eastern Liberal, because he also worked on Carolyn Elliott's campaign. Of course, Corey Tenaik ran on Carolyn Elliott's campaign, and given that Corey Tenaik had the unmitigated gall to make a comment during the election that Pierre was blowing it, well, Pierre doesn't like Corey, so everyone associated with Corey in any way, shape, or form has to go down. like Caroline Elliott, and all the people that maybe helped him at one point, but now decided to help someone else. So this is by Anthony Koch himself. I am sick to death of being told that wanting conservatives to win elections somehow makes me illiberal. It's one of the stupid ideas ever to infect the Canadian political right, and there have been some doozies in recent years, and it has become an excuse for failure. Apparently, if you care whether conservatives can actually form government, you're a quote fake conservative. If you think candidates should avoid obvious own goals, you're a sellout. If you think messaging matters, you're weak. If you suggest that screaming into the void isn't a political strategy, you're accused of wanting liberal light. I haven't spent years arguing for the end of mass immigration, stronger borders, tougher criminal sentencing, conservative state power, free speech, institutional reform, and restoration of Canadian identity because I secretly want to become a liberal. I want those things because I believe them. The difference between me and some people on the online right is that I actually want them implemented. That requires somewhere along the line, a segment of the conservative movement stopped caring about victory and started treating politics like an ever increasingly exclusive ideological club. They don't measure success by how much of their agenda becomes law. They measure success by how many people on X tell them that they were based. It is juvenile and unserious. It is one of the biggest reasons conservatives lose elections they should be winning. Absolutely true. Believe it or not, politics isn't about racking up likes and retweets. It's about taking power away from people who are fundamentally changing your country in ways you don't like and using that power to fundamentally change your country in ways that you do. Every election conservatives lose means another government that expands the bureaucracy, entrenches activist institutions, appoints ideologically captured judges, shapes the public service, influences schools, spends billions of dollars, and changes the country in ways that are often difficult to reverse. While that's happening, the professional losers on our side are congratulating themselves because their latest Instagram reel, TikTok video, or tweet, quote, did numbers online. What an achievement. Some conservatives have become so addicted to performative outrage that they genuinely cannot distinguish between courage and stupidity. They think exercising self-control is a sign of weakness, any semblance of message discipline is ideological surrender, and that every unforced error is, quote, telling the truth. No, sometimes it's just an unforced error. The left wins because it understands something parts of the right stubbornly and brazenly refuse to accept. Politics is about acquiring power and using it. The Canadian right, meanwhile, has cultivated an entire class of commentators and activists who seem almost offended by the idea of broad public approval. They sneer at persuasion, they mock professionalism, and they dismiss anyone who accurately describes the state of play as insufficiently conservative. These people have developed a worldview in which every defeat is proof that they were too moderate. Lose once, not conservative enough. Lose twice, still not conservative enough. Lose for 20 years, double down. It's political insanity. The best part, they hardly ever describe what a real conservatism actually means, substantively, or they sound like Marxists. Quote, real conservatism has never been tried. They're hardly even ideological in any case. It's a stylistic preference for petulance. No serious military commander fights a battle by deliberately alienating potential allies. No serious business grows by insulting prospective customers. No serious lawyer walks into court determined to antagonize the judge. Only in parts of conservative politics has self-sabotage been elevated into a virtue. That's what really infuriates me. The people most eager to lecture everyone else about ideological purity almost never have to carry the burden of governing or even campaigning for that matter. They don't have to balance competing priorities. They don't have to persuade skeptical voters. They don't have to build coalitions large enough to change the law. They just throw rocks from the sidelines and then explain why everybody else lost. I'm done listening. I don't want conservative politicians who sound like liberals. I want conservative politicians who govern like conservatives. There's a world of difference between the two. I want immigration reduced dramatically. I want activist capture rooted out of public institutions. I want criminals punished instead of endlessly recycled through the justice system. I want a government that unapologetically advances Canada's national interest. None of that happens because a handful of activists thought your latest social media post was a banger. It happens because you win. If your political strategy ends with another liberal government, I don't want to hear another lecture about principle. Conservatism can either be a real movement that regularly competes for government, or it can be a hobby for weirdos and cranks that normal people find repulsive. But it can't be both. That's a call that's coming from inside the house. Anthony Koch is the managing principal at AK Strategies, a bilingual public affairs firm specializing in political communications, public affairs, and campaign strategy. I like that at the end. Conservatism can either be a real movement that regularly competes for government, or it can be a hobby for weirdos and cranks that normal people find repulsive. I think we know what it is at the current moment. Then there was one that caught a lot of attention. I'm not sure if I read this one already. Dan Robertson. Yes, I believe I did read this one already to you. So that's the mood from the conservative side. And there is, oh yes, I do believe there was one other person. It was Linda, her name is. For some reason, I seem to like people named Linda. I don't know what it is here. I read you something by her before, devoted conservative, but also about the Calgary Stampede comments. I know, I can hear everyone already. She's writing another article on the Conservatives. Trust me, I keep trying to stop. My first love is writing about healthcare in Canada, especially women's healthcare. But it's not my fault the Conservative Party, and Pierre Poilièvre in particular, keeps handing me fresh material by the truckload. I recently wrote an article giving the party some credit for its latest shadow cabinet shuffle. To me, it looked like a sign that some insiders in the Conservative movement might finally be waking up from their well-paid slumber. Maybe someone somewhere in the backrooms of CBC headquarters put down the moose head and loaded nachos long enough to notice that wait for the Liberals to collapse is not actually a governing strategy. For a brief moment, the party looked like it was trying to put a more serious, educated, policy-minded face forward. It looked like the adults were attempting to crowd out the permanent drama caucus around Poilièvre and Scheer, the small but loud corner of the base that wants nothing but grievance and purity tests. Michael Chong dominated the news with his appointment as finance critic. It is the central arena of Canadian politics right now: mortgages, rent, groceries, investment, productivity, debt, tariffs, and whether this country can still build anything without turning it into a decade-long process managed by consultants and committees. Arpan Khanna has hit the ground running as Shadow Minister of Justice, speaking directly to Canadians in a serious and solutions-focused way. Eric Duncan posted a picture of himself out for drinks with the accomplished John Baird as he stepped into foreign affairs. Shuvalai Majumdar, the new Shadow Minister for Canada-US Relations, has been enjoying the Calgary Stampede while preparing to take on one of the most important files in Canadian politics. For a few days, the Conservative Party looked almost like an alternative government. Naturally, Pierre Poilièvre could not let that go on for too long. Into the frame he came, having flown into Calgary from his Ottawa mansion, dressed in full Western costume, the cowboy hat, the shiny white satin shirt, the whole Stampede stage outfit. And what did he use the moment for? Another sneery swipe at Liberal lobbyists from out east. He picked up where Jamil Javani left off, taking aim at the team around Caroline Elliott, specifically Corey Tenike. So if anyone was wondering whether Poilièvre privately thought those swipes at Elliott and the team were a bad call, we now have the answer. He did not. Given his first public chance to distance himself from it, he chose instead to endorse the attack. Before going further, I want to pause and say something clearly. Caroline Elliott deserves better. Elliott was a solid candidate. She was well-spoken, earnest, hardworking, and convincing without being alienating. She seemed genuinely nice, which is becoming an increasingly rare and underappreciated quality in conservative politics. She had support across the country and rallied a serious faction of conservatives in British Columbia around her campaign. She did not get wiped out. She did not embarrass herself. She came within a hair of winning. She should run as an MLA. If Carrie Lynn Findlay wins an election, she would be smart to have Elliott on side as a minister. If Findlay loses a general election, Elliott should step up again. She's not some discarded figure to be kicked to the curb because CPC headquarters needs a convenient body to throw under the bus. And yet, that seems to be what happened. Why? Because Corey Tenike was part of her campaign team and Poilièvre doesn't like him. That is apparently enough. Never mind that Tenike was also part of Stephen Harper's world. Never mind that he was Harper's chief of staff. Never mind that he helped Poilièvre during his own leadership bid. Never mind that the other strong Poilièvre supporters and former staffers, including people like Anthony Coach, who we just read to you, who were also involved with Elliott's campaign. To Poilièvre, Carrie Lynn Findlay beating Elliott and Tenike in the leadership race seems to be the closest thing he has had to victory since his own leadership race. So he is grasping at it, trying to stretch that vicarious 15 minutes of fame into something larger. And even vicarious is generous here. Most people didn't even know which candidate Poilièvre was backing, so it's not clear why Findlay's win would be his victory in the first place. Add to that the fact that poor Caroline Elliott was one of the few people gracious enough to take a supportive picture with the embattled Poilièvre during the race, and maybe that was her downfall. Who knows? But to keep kicking Elliott because one person but to keep kicking Elliott because of one person on her campaign team is the behavior of petty bullies. It's also beneath the office Poilièvre holds, or at least it should be. The deeper problem is that Poilièvre is angry. He's angry at how everything has played out. He's angry that Mark Carney turned out to be a much more ruthless and effective political operator than many expected. Carney entered an arena that was new to him and then proceeded to compete with a level of strategy and cold discipline that most Canadian political observers have not seen in years. He's constantly thinking, moving, and checkmating. That must be torturous for Poilièvre. A mere 18 months ago, Poilièvre looked like he had a thumping majority in his back pocket. The Liberals were exhausted. Trudeau was done. The country was angry. The polls were enormous. The whole thing looked inevitable. And then it wasn't. Carney's arrival changed the board. From day one, he sent a message about how he intended to play by taking the fight directly to Poilièvre's own seat. Of course, it was Poilièvre and Jenny Byrne's job to protect that seat, but leaders usually hold their own ridings by default, and parties usually don't go that aggressively after another leader's home base. But Carney is made of different stuff. He greenlit a political curb stomping in Poilièvre's own riding. That should have been the warning. Since then, it has been one humiliation after another. Slow drips of floor crossers, political moves timed to irritate and destabilize. The latest example was the Senate appointment. Poilièvre said that if Carney was such a fair guy, he should appoint more conservative senators. So Carney did it in the most politically painful way possible, by plucking one from Poilièvre's caucus and opening up a by-election opportunity in a riding the Liberals clearly believe they can take. It's not accidental. It is chess, and Poilièvre is losing. Stating this does not mean I am suddenly a fan of Carney as Prime Minister. I'm not sure what I think of Carney yet, and I'm still not sure what he is getting done beyond beating all of his opponents at political combat. But Conservatives need to be honest with themselves about one thing. Carney is very good at this. He has badly beaten Poilièvre at the political chessboard, and Poilièvre does not seem to know what to do about it. Worse, he doesn't seem capable of the one thing he most desperately needs: self-reflection. Instead of asking why voters recoiled, while the lead collapsed, why his negatives keep rising, and why so many people who should have been open to voting Conservative ultimately walked away, Poilièvre has used the opposition pulpit to advance paranoid theories and start pylons against other Conservatives. The theory seems to go like this. The problem is not that voters don't like Poilièvre. The problem is that Eastern liberal elites, inside or near the Conservative movement, said things that make voters not like Poilièvre. So if those people can be rooted out, silenced, mocked, or punished, then voters will finally see how amazing Poilièvre is. Everyone will cheer, the polls will recover, then Poilièvre will win. Simple as that. Except the theory is wrong. Most of the people saying things Poilièvre doesn't like are not betraying him, they're telling him the truth. He simply doesn't like hearing it. To Poilièvre, it's not his fault that he lost, it's Corey Teneyc's fault for noticing that he was blowing the lead and saying so. If Teneyc had kept cheering despite reality, apparently Poilièvre would have won. It's Doug Ford's fault, too. Ford should have delivered all of his voters to Poilièvre, even though Poilièvre did not ask for his help and reportedly made it clear he didn't need him. It's Tim Houston's fault, even though Houston's wife was knocking doors for Poilièvre while Jenny Byrne was sending his chief of staff angry texts. It's Aaron O'Toole's fault, somehow, even though O'Toole stepped down after losing, left the leadership bid, and has not stood in Poilièvre's way. It's Fred Delory's fault for noticing that Poilièvre's negatives are going up by the day. If everyone would just cheer for Poilièvre always, every day, then the voters would finally understand how fantastic he is. The disloyalty of non-constant cheering has become a Shakespearean betrayal. That's the real problem. Not the campaign, not the candidate, not the tone, not the strategy, not the inability to expand beyond the already convinced. No, the problem is the, quote, Eastern liberal elites inside the party will not clap hard enough. Honestly, it's getting sad, and more than a little paranoid. Poilièvre has lived in Ottawa for his entire adult life. He resides in one of the most Eastern liberal elite cities on the continent. He's the definition of an Ottawa insider, complete with the official residence, staff, drivers, and taxpayer-funded lifestyle to show for it. He's a well-heeled Eastern insider who flew west and used the power of his office and the weight of the CPC machine to kick Caroline Elliott, a good Conservative who just lost an election because one person around her annoyed him. He is the projection of everything he claims to despise. I've been put off by him for a while now. I am surprised, honestly, that I ever liked him as much as I did. But people's true colors come through during trials, and none of 2026 has been a good look for Pierre Poilièvre. Running over Caroline Elliott with the full weight of the well-funded CPC machine just to soothe an ego and find a new target is a bully move. It's small, it's petty, and it tells Conservatives something important about the man asking to lead them. A serious leader would take the losses, study them, and adapt. A A serious leader would ask why Canadians who were furious with the Liberals still hesitated to trust him. A serious leader would recognize that the party's path back to government depends on expanding the coalition, not purging it. A serious leader would look at people like Michael Chong, Arpan Kana, Eric Duncan, Shuvali Majumdar, Caroline Elliott, and others, and understand that the future of the movement is not built by humiliating competent conservatives for insufficient personal loyalty. But Poilièvre seems less interested in building a party than in winning an argument inside one. And that is why I suspect sooner rather than later, Poilièvre is going to get carnied by a faction of the conservative movement itself. Not by the Liberals, not by the media, not by Eastern elites, by conservatives who are tired of losing, tired of the drama, tired of the paranoia, and tired of watching a party with real talent be reduced to Pierre Poilièvre's personal grievance vehicle. Poilièvre can only take so many swipes at other people before they start firing back. The Liberals showed in April 2025 what happens when his own style of politics is turned back on him. This time, that return fire may come from inside his own party. Damn. Damn. All right. The last little segment I want to bring to you is from a conservative influencer who goes by the name of, let's take this look, Jasmine Lane. I'm going to present a couple of minutes from something that she presented. And this illustrates to me perfectly the core problem here with the conservative movement, particularly the online influencers. So take a look at this, and then we'll talk about what it is that I've noticed about the coverage.
And I want you to think about this too. Of the last 100 years, the Liberal Party of Canada has been in power for 69 total of that 100 years. What on earth can a party do with that much power? Well, they can fuse themselves into the courts. They can fuse themselves into national mythology, into the civil service, into Senate, consultants, the bank, experts, advisors, the media. They can fuse themselves into everything. And they did very successfully. And that is the ideological hold that this party has on our nation.
Look, I've been following Twitter or X now, as I'm sure all of you have. And lately, I haven't really been all that interested in because it's a cesspool of
Lately, it's been a cesspool? No, only now?
You know, I mean, the last few years, it's been a real cesspool. Yeah. But damn, it's interesting and fun now. I mean, the Tories are throwing everything at each other. This party is falling apart before our very eyes, and they're delighted to spend time criticizing each other, smacking each other over the head. And it's not just over this issue. Yesterday, what's her first name for the Lewis?
Leslie Lewis and Michelle Rempel-Garner.
He came out criticizing the $13 billion AI investment in Alberta, which is, by the way, a huge big deal, and also electricity is, and it's a provincial deal, not a federal deal. And so Michelle Rempel-Garner, who is a conservative MP, came out and attacked her. I mean, this whole thing is falling apart. Today, conservatives are laughing at if you haven't watched it, go on X and look at the Poilièvre hamburger tweet, which is all about inflation. As hamburger prices have gone up, what was it? 600% in what? 30 years? Really? And it's all the Liberals' fault, of course, right? But conservatives themselves are laughing at this. And so I think that Mr. Poilièvre is in very serious trouble. He's lost control of his caucus. His party is deeply divided. And I think he's just hanging on by his fingernails right now.
So what would the alternative actually look like? And what would it mean for the Liberal Party of Canada? The Laurentian elites. And no, I'm not suggesting, blind conservative cheerleading. I'm not recommending this Trump worshiping to be happening. I just want Canadians to have access to the real nuance, the trade-offs, the numbers, and to weigh that information and discern it for themselves.
Okay. I just want them to have access to the real numbers, the nuance, all of that, and to weigh that for themselves. That's what I want the media to give people. Are you sure you want that? considering what the party puts out, are you sure you want that? You say you want that, because that's not what this segment was about. But are you sure you want that? Because in the federal election, we had an opportunity to see that when the Conservatives presented their costing. And that was a disaster. Pierre Poilièvre, let's put it this way. If I was a serious fiscal conservative, I would have saw that costing. That would have guaranteed that the Conservative Party of Canada would never get my vote again. That costing that he presented blew up the entire party's reputation. The reputation wasn't particularly well earned either to start with, but that was not a serious document. All right.
Instead of having some verdict in advance. But that is exactly why CBC News, instead of talking about the submarine deal, instead of talking about the fact that Mark Carney had a secret cell phone trying to turn people away from America, instead of talking about the Gordie Howe Bridge, they are doing a segment on that. Pierre Poilièvre.
Okay. So she is upset that they are doing a segment on Pierre Poilièvre going to the Stampede and choosing to use a moment in his speech to attack people who have worked for him as being Eastern liberals. CBC, there's submarines. You didn't cover that. Yeah, that was covered. All the stuff that she mentioned was covered. It was not covered in this particular segment, right? You pick one segment out of a news show and you say like this, oh my God, this represents the entirety of the coverage on CBC. No, it was one segment from a news show. All those things were covered. But nowhere in this whole diatribe, and you could see in her face, it's like, nowhere in all of that is there the realization that if you didn't want the media to focus on that line in the speech, maybe the guy that you claim is being treated so unfairly by the media should have had enough mastery and control over himself to not put that damn line in the speech for it to be covered in the first place. Our leader keeps on putting toxic crap out there. The media is covering it. Why are they covering the serious stuff? The media is so against us. Your lack of personal discipline, your lack of maturity, your lack of control over your own self, your leader's inability to check himself does not constitute an obligation by the media to say, oh, well, let's just not cover him being a royal dick and stick to the policy. Which, again, I'm not sure you would like to be covered because the policy is rather thin coming from your end. Let's finish off this a bit here. Now, for this section, she's going to play another clip, and I want you to look at her face and all the emoting she's doing and how she is choosing to perform for us how unfair this coverage is. All right. Whoops.
Says, oh, wow, the liberal establishment in Ottawa, big win against them. And then the liberal establishment in Ottawa is like, oh, the party's falling apart. Wow, how predictable of a reaction that is. But that's exactly why they can't allow it. That's exactly why they waste our time with segments like that. Because if Canadians could see any of this stuff with real nuance, without fear and hatred being ingrained into their brains by these very people who accuse everybody else of doing exactly what they're doing. The entire thing that they were able to rebrand and win on would completely fall apart.
JD, message discipline was what everybody talked about for years with the Conservatives. Now we have Jamil Javani using the word degenerate to describe people like gay pride. We've got Dean Allison running his own thing, looking at COVID and vaccine injuries, and then you've got this infighting and unnecessary targeting of conservative operatives. Like it is fraying in a way I never thought we'd see.
Well, that's usually the history of a conservative party when power is not in sight. And that's what happened. They lost the election. And since then, we've seen cracks in the armor of Pierre Poilièvre as leader, but also as the party.
That would be great news if it were true.
It is.
I don't know. You be the judge.
So that's. Sorry, hold on.
Oh my God, everyone's booing.
And to me, like Bob, this is going to be the summer of discontent for the Conservative Party, which may lead to people calling openly for the departure of Mr. Poilièvre.
And the most embarrassing part is that what passes for political identity, moral superiority, virtue signaling, and I'm right and you're wrong in this country, isn't built on real people reading or examining the record and landing where they feel makes the most sense. It is literally built on what the political class has already decided the correct opinion to hold is.
So there you go. You see all that? Looks like she was like trying to chew herself up from the inside. Oh, I can't believe they're mentioning this. I can't believe they're mentioning Dean Allison having the COVID vaccine injury thing. Oh my God. I can't believe they're mentioning Jamil Giovanni going out and talking about gay people like they're degenerates, liberal degeneracy. I can't believe, why aren't they covering the serious stuff? There is so much on serious stuff to cover. The source of it is the party and the movement. She is upset, allegedly, is not getting the proper coverage. And again, and nowhere in this reflection is the concept that what it is that the conservatives are putting out there. She goes, it would be cool if it was true. It is true. These things are indeed happening. These things are being done. These things are being said by conservatives. They exist. We see the tape. We see the quotes. We see the procedure documents. It is happening. You tell me. And then she shows a clip of Pierre Poilièvre getting applauded at Stampede and Mark Carney getting booed. And that's the proof. That's the proof that the party is not fraying. That at Stampede, the place in the country at the time of the year where Pierre Poilièvre, a conservative, is most likely to get applause and the liberal prime minister is most likely to get booed. You put that together, that moment together, that is the proof that that party is not fraying apart. Not the guy caving to the COVIDiots with some, whole thing, investigation into injuries. Not the leader going to a big public event where every camera he knows is going to be on them. This is his big moment, and taking a swipe at people within his party. Not Danielle Smith announcing a data center. Leslie Lewis actually bringing up some concerns about environmental aspects, and then Michelle Rempel-Gardner online rather than picking up the phone and calling her and saying, hey, what are you doing? Let's talk about this. Taking a swipe at her. The fur flying between Dmitry Ksudas, Nick Kouvalis, and everybody else in the current Conservative Party. It's a mess. These things are happening. This Jamil Giovanni is going all around making these big movements and whatnot, and like the leader of the party is just like, okay. He doesn't have control of his party. It doesn't look like. He doesn't even have control of himself. It looks like. These things are true. And she is there and she is all offended. Because the Liberals have formed government for 69 years. Institutions like the CBC It recently had 10 of its 12 board members appointed by Stephen Harper, and most of them were donors to the party. The liberal mindset is so ingrained that everything there is being fed to us as something that they're telling us what we should think already rather than just giving us the facts and let us make our own decisions like this. And then says that the person who reasons in such a way that showing clips from the stampede of someone getting booed and someone getting cheered is the proof you need. That the reality that we're all observing, the reality that's being reported on by journalists, much to the dismay of this particular person, is actually real and actually is the story. Because a party that can't govern itself certainly can't govern a country. The party is fraying. The party is falling apart. It banded together for a while when it was 20 points ahead and thought it was going to win and was going to get the access to the spoils. But just like many conservative parties, we've seen it in our lifetime, right? After Brian Mulroney, 2 consecutive majorities, the party split, got dropped down to 2 seats. And then we saw the split with Reform. And then we saw the reunion with Crap. And then they created the Federal Conservative Party after Peter MacKay betrayed David Orchard. And then we saw all of that happen in Alberta with the PC Party, and then the Wild Rose, and then the split, and then Jason Kenney coming and uniting the right for less than a term before it split up all again. Now we got this hot mess. Right? In BC, the BC Liberals, that was because it's not the BC Conservative Party anymore. In Saskatchewan, we've got the Saskatchewan Party now, because the Conservative brand imploded over there too at one point. It's not new for us as Canadians to watch the Conservatives implode and their brands implode. It's been a lifelong thing for me. Having to rebrand, change the party logo, change the party name, split, remerge. The movement's a mess. The movement frays easily, particularly when it doesn't win. All of these things are true. And she is sitting there acting like she's offended that it's even mentioned. Why can't we just stick to the nuance and the numbers? Because you don't. It really is as simple as that. If you want the coverage to be about the nuance and the numbers, then make everything you say and do about the nuance that you are supporting or making. And you do not have the ability to attribute the responsibility where it lands, and you don't have the ability to see that quality of coverage is usually directly proportional to the quality of the material put out in the public domain to be covered. You want better coverage, do better. You don't want the press reporting about you airing out your dirty laundry in public? Don't air out your dirty laundry in public. I mean, I don't know what to say to these people. It's not liberals having been in power 69 years. It's not indoctrination. It's not systems. It's not media people thinking better than you. It's not experts trying to punch you down. It's you guys acting the fool. It's you guys entering every room, chin up, ass out, smugly and confidently making claims that have not been verified, punching down on everyone you can along the way. It's you feeding us a steady diet of this for years. And us getting fed up. It's us as Canadian citizens having the opportunity to see someone who actually is competent juxtaposed to someone who is grossly not. And having chosen for ourselves that we like competence. Between someone who clicks on his cell phone camera at least once a day, okay, maybe I'm being too exaggerating, maybe 3 times a week, to produce another video for us where we look straight up his nostrils and he points his fingers in our faces, where he twists and torques and selectively edits and cherry picks and everything in such a way where he is telling us directly to our faces, hey, you watching this, I think you're stupid, and wow, this is how stupid I think you are. Watch the Whoppers I'm going to tell you and I expect you to buy. And someone who comes to a mic and actually speaks to them like they're intelligent. Sometimes some of the criticisms that we're getting, even at a too high a level, assuming that we're smarter than we are. If Carney gets criticized for something, it's usually that. Maybe people like to be talked to, like the person talking to them assumes they're smart, particularly when the person talking to them has a PhD and is super accomplished. Hi there. We're having a conversation. We both know that I clearly know more about this topic than you could. I can forget more about this topic than you could ever learn in the amount of a life that you have left. But come, let's have it at a table, and I'll talk to you like I don't believe you're an idiot. People like that. You sit in front of your computer and you watch a Carney press conference and you watch a Pierre Poilièvre press conference and you have two different feelings inside you. People like the feeling they have inside them after watching a Mark Carney press conference. Your content sucks, conservatives. Your content sucks, and the people who deliver it do as well. The problem's not the media, the problem's not liberals, the problem's not the left, the problem's not 69 years of liberal government, the problem is your content and the people you choose to deliver it. Fix that, and your world might change. That's all I got. All right, kids and cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell the peeps and poops all about us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring. So, you got to let people know. You got to let people know. All right. One of the ways that you can help us, if you would be so inclined to do so, would be to scan this QR code, which will bring you to our YouTube page if you're not already there. Click on our buttons, like, share, and subscribe. Click on the notification bell and select all so that you can know when we have some fresh content up for you. And if you are watching on your tablet or your phone less than 7 days after the live broadcast, please swipe left on the comment section and offer us some hype points because it allows smaller audience shows like ourselves to get more prominence and be seen more. So thank you for all of that. If you would like to help us financially, because we do incur some financial costs to bring this show to you, and we would love to have your help and support with that, please scan this QR code, which will bring you to our tip jar called the Emergency Hydration Fund here at the Beaver Lodge, where you can fill our cup with beaver moistener because a moist beaver is always a happy beaver. A scientific fact. We tested it. I'm happy when I'm moist, but not very happy when I'm schwitzing. There's a balance. But if you want to make sure that this cup is filled with grade A quality beaver moistener, a little tip to the Emergency Hydration Fund would be great. Either a cup of hot coffee for me, a cup of hot coffee for me, a cup of hot coffee for Mr. Grizzly, and a cup of hot chocolate for me. That would be great. And if there's anything left over, well, then it goes back into the show for, internet fees and subscriptions and all that kind of stuff and all the things that we need to bring this show to you a few days a week. So thank you for all of your support. We really appreciate it. And when you donate through our coffee page, we get 95 to 97% of your donation. We also have super chats, stickers, and memberships on our YouTube page where we get about 70% of your donation. In addition, if you are trying to avoid the USCE Tech Bros, you can send us a direct bank transfer to truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, which is our email address, of course. And when you do that, it is a bank to bank transfer, all Canadian, so we get 100% of your donation. The USCE Tech Bros get nothing, nothing, I say. And it feels good. So if you would donate, we would be very, very, very grateful. And thank you for everything that you do to support us. Now, if you do not have the financial means to donate, please do not worry, because the gifts of your attention, participation are the ones that matter the most to us. And we want to hear from you. So truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. You can use it to send us a direct transfer to support us, but you can also use it to send us compliments or constructive critique, guest suggestions for the interview project, questions that you have about the show or about politics that you would like us to answer, and your good news, which helps us with the doom scrolling, because some days are pretty heavy, and we love to share in your joy. If you are looking for us on our socials, at True Eager at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge, also on the Jitter, True North Eager Beaver on Facebook. We have our Substacks called Beaver Bites. We have True North Eager Beaver on Instagram, and of course, the unofficial Dam Fam Discord that is run by members of the Dam Fam if you want to keep the conversation going. And of course, right here on our YouTube channel, right here in the comments section, the best way to absolutely get our attention is to leave us something there. We read everything that you send us, and we're not able to answer everyone, however, but everything that you send us, either in word or in dollars, does go back into the show to make it better, and we do appreciate your support. So thank you very much for all of that. Because democracy is something that you do, kits and cubs, we have some petitions for you to sign. The first one, of course, is the one to make it such that the House of Commons votes to no longer fund Stornoway as a residence for the leader of the opposition. It is our Commons petition number E7395, and I will include the link for it in the chat just below. We are now at 25,553 signatures for that one. So please, again, do share it far and wide if you can. And by the way, thank you to the kit who issued a gentle correction and told me that the town in Saskatchewan is pronounced Leuven. Thank you. All right. The other one that we have for you, kits and cubs, as we mentioned, there's a band in Saskatchewan that is trying to raise attention to the fact that there will be no more hockey night in Canada on Saturdays. And they would like that to happen either for the CBC or Sportsnet or other people to get together to try to create some type of way that that tradition can maintain itself here in Canada. And this petition has 16,067 signatures at the moment, and I'm including it here for you. And finally, last but not least, we've been talking about it the past few days, kits and cubs, but we do have the Manitoba flood appeal from the Red Cross. Yesterday, I think I may have screwed up and talked about fire rather than floods when I was mentioning this. Now it's just kind of hit me. But if you would like to help our brothers and sisters in Manitoba who are affected by the floods, you can do so by making a donation online at give.redcross.ca/page/26MBFLA. And I am including the link here for you. Those donations are going to be matched by the government of Manitoba. So for every dollar you donate, you actually have that impact of that donation doubled, thanks to what will be happening there. And from what I can see here, there does not seem to be a time limit on this at the moment, from what I can see here at the Red Cross page. And if you would like to donate via phone or via email, Well, hey, you can do that too, kits and cubs. You can do that by dialing 1 800 418 1111. That's 1 800 418 1111. Or by sending an email to wecare@redcross.ca. That's wecare@redcross.ca. So once again, the web address give.redcross.ca/page/26MBFLA, Manitoba Flood Appeal, MBFLA. And of course, the phone number 1 800 418 1111 and the email address wecare@redcross.ca. Words of wisdom, kits and cubs. Not sure what I got for you today in terms of words of wisdom. I'm just going to say again, it's always good to take a step back, right? In this last example that we showed you about that influencer, the nose is too up close to the trees. To take a step back and get a big picture view of what's going on right now. So again, when you see the news, one of the things that I want you to do for your own critical analysis is when somebody in the news is trying to get you to look at a very specific tiny thing. Sometimes there's a legitimate reason for that, but sometimes it's also to draw you into a narrative. So you focus on this nugget of the narrative and forget to place that nugget within the entire context of the narrative. Is it really that bad? For example, right? So that would be my words of wisdom, is to always make sure when you have articles and positions like this online that are focusing on really one specific minute detail of something. Right? It's always important to analyze for yourself whether that minute detail being focused on is one of convenience or one that's actually central and critical. Because a lot changes from that point on. Okay. It could be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourself. Have a fantastic weekend. Beaverific weekend. And at the count of 3, if I could have you all saying, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock. On 1, on 2, and on 3. Oh, loveliness. Here is a little cock-a-doodle-doo just for you. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, kids and cubs. Normally, I come back to us with some Canadians who make us proud. Just going to mention here in passing, quick shout out to Team Canada Women Under 17, playing currently right now in the quarterfinals of the World Championships for Women's Under 17 against Team China. And they are in the second quarter, and China has a 22-18 lead at the moment. They just scored a basket. So hopefully Canada will pick that up, but it's so far a very tight game. I wanted to bring to you today, rather than Canadians who make us proud, a couple of moments of Schadenfreude, 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 Schadenfreude. We're going to laugh cause this shit is funny. Schadenfreude, Schadenfreude. I got some news about Kevin O'Leary and Elon Musk. That they'll probably send you out into the weekend feeling a little better. Remember everybody saying that there should be no trillionaires? And Elon Musk unfortunately became a trillionaire at one point. Well, turns out he might not be a trillionaire anymore. According to Jennifer Saybill of The Motley Fool, Elon Musk has been the wealthiest man in the world since 2024, and he reached trillionaire status for the first time when Space Exploration Technologies stock briefly topped $200 a share in its first week of trading. However, SpaceX stock is now 26% off its highs, and Elon Musk is no longer a trillionaire. What does that mean for his companies, SpaceX and Tesla, and for shareholders? Many of the world's billionaires have their wealth tied up in stock, usually as executives of their companies. Elon Musk heads two of the world's top 15 most valuable companies, and he owns a substantial stake in each. As of July, he owns 717.1 million Tesla shares, or 15.7% of the company, which is worth about $282.4 billion at today's price. He also owns about 46% of SpaceX stock, with more that could come his way based on performance measures, and today's prices, that's $704.5 billion, and together his net worth is $987 billion, just shy of $1 trillion. Both of these stocks have been sliding lately, although they're both trillion-dollar companies. SpaceX is the seventh most valuable company in the U.S., worth $1.94 trillion, while Tesla is 11th and worth $1.48. Tesla stock is down 12.4% this year at $148 a share. SpaceX stock is still over its IPO price of $135, but it's dropped below its market open price of $150. The other thing, to Kevin O'Leary, if you remember, at one point he was on Fox News, I think it is, and he was claiming that there's these two women, I think from New Mexico, if I'm not mistaken, that were opposing his data center, and suggested, with no evidence whatsoever, because well, that's what Kevin O'Leary does, that the two people in question may have been financed by China to build a case against him. And at the time, I said, "Oh yeah, this is going to." They basically they outed him that way and like mocked him and just had a great time. But I was sitting there and I was going, there's some potential for a class action suit there, because that's quite an allegation to be making of people. Well, it seems that that may have happened. According to Hassan Ali Kanu of Politico, two Utah nonprofits, yes, it's Utah, not New Mexico, two Utah nonprofits and their founders sued Fox News and celebrity investor Kevin O'Leary on Wednesday, alleging they were defamed when O'Leary repeatedly claimed on the network that they were operating on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party. The lawsuit stems from comments O'Leary made in May responding to opposition to his plans to build a 40,000-acre data center in the state. According to the complaint, O'Leary accused the plaintiffs of being, quote, proxies for the Chinese government. The plaintiffs are Joshua Cantor, founder of Alliance for Better Utah, and Gabrielle Finlayson, founder of Elevate Strategies. Okay, so these are not the same two people that were in that video. These are other people in this thing. So this thing could grow, actually, because now that this has started, if that other video, those two ladies in it, decide to join this, this could grow. According to the complaint, the Shark Tank star repeated similar allegations during at least 10 separate appearances, claiming that he had proof from an investigation conducted by data scientists. The suit alleges Fox News continued inviting O'Leary on air, and that network hosts affirmed or endorsed his claims even after the plaintiffs publicly denied them. O'Leary later retracted his statements after receiving a legal demand, and Fox News apologized, according to the complaint, but the plaintiffs argue reputational, financial, and emotional damage had already been done. O'Leary did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Fox News Media told Politico that it, quote, publicly corrected the record on every program where on-air guest Kevin O'Leary's comments were made, all of which was extensively publicized, adding that it will, quote, vigorously defend against this lawsuit. The network in 2023 settled a defamation lawsuit by Dominion Voting Systems for a record-setting $787.5 billion, a point that I raised yesterday when talking about the President of the United States having some words for the coverage that he's been getting from ABC and NBC. Yeah, but the only network that's been sued for many million was Fox, though, right? Republican Utah State Senator Todd Weiler also apologized in June for sharing O'Leary's accusations, saying he'd been, quote, duped. The lawsuit comes as data center projects across the country faced rising opposition from local residents, including over their environmental impacts, electricity use, and water consumption. O'Leary's proposed Stratos project is also the subject of a separate lawsuit in Utah State Court brought by Alliance for a Better Utah and several individual plaintiffs, alleging that the construction approval process violated the rights of local residents. O'Leary's planned data center encountered what virtually all data center developers across the country have had to contend with over the last few years: intense scrutiny from local residents, community organizations, and elected officials on both sides of the aisle, according to Cantor and Finlayson's complaint. Rather than answering the community's questions and addressing their concerns about his project, O'Leary went on the attack and singled out plaintiffs in particular, even though plaintiffs had barely engaged with the data center project. So there you go, kids and cubs. Elon Musk is no longer a trillionaire, and Kevin O'Leary's big mouth might be getting him sued. Because your queen comes bearing gifts. Okay, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. And we will see you on Tuesday of next week. So we're going to have an extra long weekend here at the Beaver Lodge. Okay.